In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to build this gaming PC, and better yet, a PC that's easily upgradable and can grow with you. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. We're going to start the build with the ASRock B650 Pro RS motherboard. This is a beautiful board. This is not the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth edition. They didn't have any more in stock when I ordered it, so we'll just go ahead and install a card. Make sure when you get it to remove this sticker off of the I/O shield. That way nothing happens, not that it would, but just in case. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and push down on this little arm. Pushing down on this arm, we're going to remove it from this little bracket here, which will go ahead and release the tray itself. So we'll pull this arm back and then we'll open up this tray. You need to make sure that you don't touch any of these pins. If you bend any one of the pins, you void the warranty with ASRock or with any motherboard manufacturer. And then of course, touching those pins will make the CPU not function properly. Then bringing the AMD Ryzen 7600X processor, flipping it over, we need to make sure that we have this gold pin matching up with this little triangle right up here. So we're just going to go ahead and drop it right in place. Then once it's in, we'll just wiggle it a little tiny bit just to make sure that it's properly in the socket. Then once that's in, we'll go ahead and drop the tray. We'll raise this arm in case it felt like it did for ours. And then we'll make sure that this little piece right over here grabs this lip right here and we'll push it in. This protector will just jump right out of the socket, and then we'll push this arm back under this lip over here. And then we can put this away. I highly recommend you put this in your motherboard box, just in case you decide to one day replace this motherboard. And now we have the CPU installed. In order to install the Arctic Freezer 36 A-RGB fan, we need to remove these brackets right over here. So we'll just go ahead and use a Phillips head to unscrew them. And like we did before with the screws and here, make sure you put this maybe inside of the CPU box so you don't lose them, or the motherboard box. This one as well. And now on these screw holes where we just removed the brackets, we'll go ahead and install these nylon spacers. Just drop them in place. And for these mounting clips, we want to make sure that this piece is sticking upwards and this little lip and these down here are kind of making a circle. So we install it just like that. And then we'll screw in these two black screws. And we don't want to tighten them just yet, just enough so that they're in and they don't move. And now we'll go ahead and tighten it just enough so that it won't move. And we'll repeat the same on this side. And for the thermal paste, going with Arctic's recommendation, we'll go ahead and apply an X. And then just pull this back through just in case you need more later so you don't waste it. And now so that we can apply the heatsink, we need to make sure we remove this warning label. Many people leave it on by mistake. It happens, we're human. And then on top, making sure not to touch this again, we want to align it so that Arctic is facing upwards correctly. And now we're going to go ahead and drop this into place. We want to make sure that this screw and this screw falls into this side and this side as well. So we'll just drop it right in here. Now, once that's in place, we'll screw this down a little tiny bit just to make sure the teeth get into the screw hole. And to give you a different angle, we'll repeat that same process right over here, making sure to get in the screw hole. We just don't want to move that thermal paste around too much. And now since we're tightening the last one, we'll go ahead and screw it in all the way. And we'll repeat that same process on the other side. And now we can remove that label. Now, before we install the fans, let's go ahead and install the RAM. So before we install the RAM, I want to show you the legend. The legend here shows what each of these slots is named. The first one is A1, A2, B1, and B2. That's going to help us know where to install the RAM. Now, because we have 2 sticks of RAM, we want to be in dual channel, and the manual states that we need to install it this way. We need to install the RAM under slot A2 and B2. So we're going to just open this up right over here, pull it out. That's what locks the RAM in place. And then we want to make sure that we install the RAM correctly. You want this notch to match the notch right over here. So we'll slide it in over here, the bottom of the board first, and I'll turn the board around so you can see it better. And then we'll slide it right into the slot over here and push it down. And you'll hear it click in place. And this will lock in place once the RAM is installed properly. And this is open again. And now that we know that the sticker faces the RAM, we can install it the same way. If you were to install it incorrectly, you would just slide it here under B2, the correct slot, but you won't be able to slide it in. It'll just seesaw like that. So you would just need to turn it around, slide it right into the slot, both ends, starting on this side first. You push this side down, and then over here, you'll see this lock in place, and you hear a clicking typically, not always. And your RAM is installed properly. For good measures, you may want to just double check, make sure you're pushing in all the way. You don't need to do it incredibly hard, but you want to make sure all of those gold pins touch the gold pins on the motherboard so that it's properly seated. Arctic has done some great work in not only the heatsink, but also the way you install it to make it incredibly easy. So first off, on the fans themselves, you want the airflow to come in from the front of the case and then come out the rear of the case. That'll be the way it's installed in this case. Now, if you don't know which way the fan blows air to, aside from typically when you see the logo here and it spins with it, and the frame is back here, it's going to be blowing this way. But if you still can't tell, or maybe my explanation wasn't the greatest, which I know it wasn't, we can see right on here, typically on the fan, showing the airflow, the arrow pointing this way. This is the way the air is going to blow, and the blades are spinning this way. Now, that's also going to help us to figure out which way we want these cables facing. Okay, typically you're going to want to face them like this, facing down here, so the cables are out of the way. The other thing about these fans is really cool. Since there's 2 fans, they're going to attach to the front and to the rear, sucking in air from the front of the case, blowing it out the rear of the case, so that we don't take up 2 PWM fan headers. We're going to connect this centerpiece right over here, which will normally connect to the motherboard header. We're going to connect it right here to the secondary fan, so that the secondary fan's PWM header plugs into the motherboard. And we're going to do the same with the ARGB headers. If your motherboard doesn't have ARGB, just tuck this aside. You don't need to worry about it. So this would normally be the side that connects to the motherboard. We're going to grab it from the other fan, and we're going to join these pins into these holes here. There's a little blockage right there, so we'll make sure that we connect them accordingly. And then this is what connects to the motherboard. Now again, we're going to place it so that the cables are at the bottom. And so the way that they've made this is incredibly easy. So we'll have these little nipples sticking out on the rear of the fan, and they're just going to slide right into these holes over here. Now, I did it after we installed the RAM so that the fans won't get in the way of the RAM. Either way though, there's plenty of space, but just in case. So we'll go ahead and slide that right here, and it will just push right into place. If for any reason you needed to remove these fans, maybe you installed it wrong, just pull them out, and the same way you pushed it in, you just pull it out and it comes off really easy. And then we'll move all these cables over here to the side. And then we'll install the fan on the rear. Again, paying attention to this. So the airflow is going this way. We need to reverse it. Okay, just like that. And we'll snap it in. And all the cables are on the bottom. Now, at the top of the board's upside down right now, but this is the top of your case. Typically right here on this particular motherboard, it's right next to the RAM. We'll find CPU fan. This is where you connect this PWM fan header. Now notice there is these two little stripes right over here. That is going to go ahead and hold this plastic piece in its place so that we can easily slide this right into place. Then we'll see right over here, and it's different on every board, the ADDR_LED3 or the adjustable LEDs, ARGB, and we'll connect that right over there. So number 3 is the block portion, and we can see number 2 over here is the block portion. So we'll just turn it around so that it's at the top. And that's connected. Even though it's one of the most difficult to connect, that's connected. So I'm just gonna clean this up 1 second. Make sure to keep this plastic piece on there on the pins so that nothing makes contact. We don't wanna short anything out. And now we'll just slide it right underneath that, out of sight, out of mind. And we can make it look nice a little bit later on. All right, now that we've installed the CPU and the CPU cooler, as well as the RAM, we need to install the M.2. Here we've chosen the Viper Gaming VP 4300 Lite M.2 SSD. We're gonna go ahead and install it right underneath this M2 Armor heatsink. So we'll just unscrew that here. Now we're going to install the M.2 right into the socket. We're going to match this notch right over here on the M.2 with the notch right over here. We'll just slide it right over here. We want to make sure those gold pins disappear. And now that we've inserted the M.2 into the socket over here, and we made sure that the pins have disappeared over here, we're going to go ahead and remove this film off of the thermal pad. So just peel that off. Now, remember those 2 screws are still in place over here and over here. And now holding that M.2 SSD down to make sure that that screw hole is completely out, we're going to go ahead and drop that screw right in here just to make sure that it's seated properly. So that's when it makes it a little bit easier to install it when it's not in the case already. And just screw it down for a little threading. And then we'll screw this one down for a little threading as well. And then we could screw that one in all the way. And then continue by screwing this one down all the way. So now that we've installed the RAM, the CPU, the heatsink for the CPU, and the M.2 SSD, we're ready to move this inside of the case. So once we sit the case on its side, we're met with some padding because thankfully on the back of this case, on all 4 edges, they have rubber pads so that it lends itself better to building, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and remove all 4 of these screws from the side so that we can remove the side panel and have access to the inside of the case. So now on the inside of the case, remember this is a micro ATX case. So we need to make sure that we have the proper screws for this. So there'll be 2 over here, 1 over here, 1 in the middle, 1 up here, 1 over here, and 1 over here. So altogether 8 screws. So there needs to be a standoff here, here, and here. Then 1 over here, 1 over here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 over here. So in the accessories bags for the case, it's nice that they include zip ties. We'll just take all of this out, and they'll have standoffs here. And here's where they'll have all the screws and everything for the standoffs. And these are what we're looking for. To install that standoff, you can do it by fingertip over here, but then it becomes incredibly difficult and you would need a wrench. But in this case, they include a standoff screw bit. So you can just attach the Phillips head side over here, and then you could screw it in with that. Make sure it's nice and tight. You're also able to use the regular screwdriver that you would use, which would make things a lot easier to make sure it's nice and tight. Don't screw it too much because then you might thread it. Then also, aside from me knowing where everything is, and I should have stated it, everywhere for a micro ATX motherboard, there's a little M here, M1, 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 M, MI, or I is for ITX, so not M1, MI. And that'll tell you everywhere you would plug in an MATX or an IATX standoff. The fact that they include this bit is invaluable. I recommend after this, save it in your toolbox for later. You never know when you may need it again. And lastly, right under here, the bottom standoff location. I initially thought it would be up here, but it's actually on the bottom. So now that we've removed this cable, set it to the side for the fan, and remove all of these cables down here, we're gonna go ahead and drop the motherboard in place. And then slide this back here so that the IO shield comes out in the back. And so after we set the motherboard and place the IO correctly in the back, we're going to screw in these screws for the motherboard, which typically these are for the power supply, but if that's what they want. So we'll screw it in right in the middle just to make sure that all of the screws have been placed properly. And then we'll come over here. It makes it so much easier when the screwdriver tip has been made magnetic. I highly recommend it. So we've done over there, we've done here, and I'm doing over here to the right. Then down here. So it's great. It looks like all of the screw holes are perfectly aligned and all of the standoffs we placed are correct. Coming down over here so we can actually see what we're doing. This one is going to be a lot more difficult because we can't see where the standoff is. We're gonna have to skip that one, unfortunately. And thankfully, we did plug in the PWM and ARGB connection. The 8-pin might be a little challenging since it's up here, but we should be able to fit our hands in here. But definitely one thing I want you to take note of, and we are going to be able to put in the rear fan on this PWM header right over here. So thankfully everything's falling in place. Now we just need this screw right up here. So it definitely also helps to have a very long Phillips head. All right, so everything's good here. I'm going to go ahead and plug in this PWM fan header over here. So I'm going to slide the cable underneath that fan, which is over this heatsink. Then I'm going to spin it just like this so that the cable gets a little bit shorter and looks a little bit nicer. And now slide all the excess back underneath the fan. Okay, perfectly hidden. All right, now that we have the system all put together this way at least, we're going to go ahead and put some cables together. Even though we've already done the fan up here and we've connected this fan over here, we need to sort all of the front panel cables, the USB 3.0s, USB 2.0s, the front panel audio header, and the dreaded buttons over here. So first off, we're going to go ahead and remove this rear panel. Makes things a lot easier. And typically you're going to be doing this with the case laying down like we were doing earlier, but it's a lot easier for me to show you with the case standing up. All right, so this opens up the case and makes things a little bit easier for us. So the USB 3.0 header, there is two spots for it. There is one down here and there's one over here. I'm thinking I'm going to slide it over here and then hide it with the power supply, the ATX 24 pin. And then the front panel headers, there's nothing I can do here. I gotta slide them maybe through here, gotta figure it out. The front panel audio goes right over here, and the USB 2.0s are over here. We have plenty of PWM headers and ARGB headers, a ton more than I thought there would be. Another one over here, PWM, and yeah, but we already have everything connected right up there. Okay, so USB 3.0, let's see if we can, they're incredibly short, but I'm just going to prep them here, and I'm thinking right over here, and then, oh, that works out great. Right back here. Okay, so it looks like we have all three. So first we're going to start off with the front panel audio header. Here we can see there is a missing pin right over here, or a block pin, and there's one over here, so we're just going to match those up. Okay, connected. And then USB 3.0 right over here. So now with USB 3.0, there is a little notch right over here. Might be a little difficult to tell. Then there is an opening right over here for that notch. So we're just going to go ahead and line up those notches, and be careful with the pins. These pins bend very easily. So we're just going to go ahead, push that in straight, and it clicks right in. Now we just need to make sure that that cable doesn't move too much, because that connection isn't the greatest on any motherboard with any set of cables. And now the part everybody dreads for some reason, the front panel power and reset and all that stuff. It's a lot easier than a lot of people make it out to be. On the cables, there are positive and negative connections. So for example, right over here on HDD LED, so on the left is negative and on the right is positive. All right, so the same is going to apply when we're plugging it in. So for example, on the motherboard, HDD LED on the left is positive and on the right is negative. And that's going to be right over here, right where it says HDD LED. And I know it's incredibly difficult. I'm gonna try to zoom in for you, okay? Now don't be afraid, I've gotten it wrong before too. We can always come back in afterwards and fix it. Now power LED, positive and negative. Positive is on the left, negative is on the right. So let's look for power LED, perfect. Power LED. We can see negative on the right and positive on the left. So positive is on the left. So I'm just going to take the positive and put it right above the HD LED positive, and the other, the negative, I'm going to put that right above the HD LED negative. And now the reset switch, positive is on the right, negative is on the left, but this one, there is no polarity, so we can just plug it in any way we'd like on the bottom. And then power switch has the same thing. Positive is on the left and negative is on the right, but there is no polarity on here, so we can just plug it anywhere we'd like there. And then we'll get to that part when we turn on the machine for the first time, so don't worry too much about that now. So you might be lucky and your board might already have Wi-Fi, but if you had to buy one like me, unfortunately we need to put it on the bottom PCIe slot. So to do that, unfortunately this case does not have the greatest PCIe expansion slot experience, and you'll find that on the budget cases. So I'm just removing this guard here, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm going to remove this here. Okay, so the bottom one, or any one of them, doesn't just pop out. We need to kind of wiggle it out of the way here, and it's a nice case, but I really hate that. It ends up saving money, but causes a little frustration. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but you saw, and we can never put that back in. So just make sure you plug it into the right one, and then we'll just slide it right over here. And again, even though this is a by 1 and this is a by 16 slot, electrically a by 8 slot, it's also an electrically by 1 slot or by 4 slot. So we'll just slide that right in here, and that's it. Now we've installed that, and now we'll come down here and we'll use the same screws that we used for the motherboard to screw this in place. And now the other reason I wanted to come in here and install this, aside from the fact that it's time, we have to attach the Bluetooth module, which is on this card as well. Now it gets power from here, which gets power from a USB 2.0 header. So we'll just connect that right into here. Kind of just slides in place with these two little rails right there into the card. And then this little piece right over here that comes out right here. Slides right in there. And then we'll use one of the two USB 2.0 headers. You'll notice there is a missing piece right over here, and we're going to align it with the missing piece right over here on the USB 2.0 header. So that's it. We'll slide that right in there. I'm not going to focus too much on making it look pretty right now. That'll be on the cabling portion at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. So now we're going to insert the power supply, route a few cables, and then we'll connect the graphics card. So this is a modular power supply. What I'm going to do is we're going to take it out of the box. Then we're going to connect all the cables that we're going to need in there, and then maybe leave a few extras. All right, so again, this is a modular power supply. What we're going to do is first install it like this. The fan's going to be at the bottom of the case. There is a filter at the bottom of the case. We don't want it like this with the open part facing up, because if a screw falls in there, liquid falls in there, anything falls in there, this will get messed up. So like this, everything will be protected as it's supposed to be. What we're going to need is the motherboard connection, this one right over here, which will go to the ATX 24 pin. Then there's going to be 4 here. There's going to be 2 that'll be for PCIe, 2 that'll be for CPU, but it could be 3 that could be used for PCIe and 1 for CPU, depending on the motherboard. This particular motherboard only has one 8-pin. You see here how it says PCIe and CPU, PCIe and CPU. That's how that works. And then there's SATA and PATA. And well, we're not going to need any SATA devices. We don't have any PATA devices with the Molex connection. So we're not going to connect those. We're just going to use SATA. I'm only going to connect one SATA. You never know what we need. I'm going to connect 2 PCIes and 1 CPU, as well as the ATX. Here are the bag of cables. So actually this brings 2 CPU cables, 2 SATA cables, and a Molex cable. So I would have to daisy chain if I had a more powerful graphics card, which I'm not too happy of. So first off, we're going to connect the ATX 24 pin cable. We'll connect this 10 pin cable first. Connect that there. And then we'll connect this one right in here. Easy enough. The other end goes into the ATX 24 pin. And then we'll connect a SATA. Again, we don't need a SATA cable. This is a just in case, and we'll slide it and hide it in the back. Just one. And I'll connect that right over here. Okay. And the PCIe cable will connect to any one of these. And I said lastly, but I forgot about the 8-pin EPS CPU power. Okay, we'll connect the side that has these numbers into the power supply. All right, so now we're all done here. We just slide it in, and we'll notice there's little rubber grommets over here where we could just lay the power supply on. Actually has a little rail system here, so we'll go ahead and remove these. A little bit awkward. So slide this out for now. Now that we've taken out the railing system, we'll go ahead and lay down the power supply here, and we'll put that right over here. We need to make sure that we can see all the screw holes for the power supply right through its proprietary kind of method here. So there'll be one over here, then another one. Well, we'll see that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and screw those in. And it's going to be different for every power supply, unfortunately. That's why they have many screw holes here. And now that the railing system is in place, we'll go ahead and line this up. Very awkward little system here. I don't know why they would have done it, but they did it. All right, now once we have that in place, we can screw that back together. Very, very awkward the way that they have that implemented on this case. All right, now that we have the power supply in place, we're just going to go ahead and slide some of the cables in different spots. Actually, they're probably all going to be in the same one. But anyway, the ATX 24 pin, I'm going to slide it right back over here. And we're going to keep the PCIe cables right on this side. So I'm just going to make it look a little tiny bit nicer, just sliding it through here. Okay. Then the 8-pin EPS CPU power, I'm going to slide back here since we're going to feed it through the top of the case. And lastly, the SATA power, which we're not going to need, but just in case we want to attach another drive or something later, just slide that back here, and we're going to hide it in the back of the case. And I'm going to keep this just over here for right now. So we have all of this already set up. And then now the CPU power, or EPS, I'm going to slide right through here. And I'm going to push it right in this little hole up here that they have just for this cable. Now again, this one's going to be very difficult. There's a chance I'm going to have to take the motherboard out. I hope not, but we'll see. All right. So that is seated there. The ATX 24 pin is going to slide right in here because that's where it is on the other side of the board. SATA connection, I'm just going to keep back here, and I'll make it look nicer in the cabling portion of the video where we make everything look nicer. All right, so we can see right up here is that 8-pin. Now, it's not easy to get to. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to pop this out and just kind of hang out there just for a little bit. And I'm going to connect that EPS cable. Because it's so difficult, there's no good way for me to show you. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to just kind of fumble my way through it. All right, cable is connected, and now I'm going to just pop this back into place. Unfortunately, it's not as pretty as it was, but that's okay. It's kind of sort of hidden if you pretend that it is. All right, perfect. Nobody knows. Then the ATX 24 pin over here. Just gonna go ahead and connect just like this. Okay, that is connected. Now I'm going to plug in the graphics card so that you see how it's plugged in, but that's one of the things I'm going to be taking out when I have to make everything look nice. So like we did before, we're going to this out of the way. Just kind of wiggle it out, take it out. And this is a 2-slot card. So we got the other one out as well. And then, ooh, this is long. Then we just install that graphics card. It's very difficult for me to show you in this case because of how tight. So I'm going to link up above the video where I installed this ARC card so you can see just how I'm doing it. All right, and the card is in. And now we can put this back over here. And actually what we're supposed to do is unscrew it and then screw it through here and pop it back in. This is just so that you can easily slide the card back in, but I'll do that on the cabling portion. And then PCIe, any which one of them will connect over here. I'll choose this particular one. Pop that right into there. So now as it is, this will work 100%, but we don't want to build a machine like this. We want to make it look pretty. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to install everything as I would on my own machine, because this is my own machine, and I'm going to make it look pretty. I'm going to do it on camera, but I'm going to do it in fast forward mode. So I'm not going to be talking through it. You're just going to see what I do. Okay, so that looks nice, and now we'll put the ARC back in. So now we're just going to go ahead and put the side panel back on. It goes like this. So now everything is connected, everything looks nice. Could probably move a few things, make it look a little bit nicer. And there we're set. So let me put the glass on. Right over here, and then we'll screw it on. So we've built this beautiful budget gaming system inside of the Cooler Master Masterbox Q300L case. So far she looks beautiful. I actually really like the way it looks inside of this case. Even though this is a larger heatsink, it fits perfectly fine in there. The cabling could have done a little bit better if I spent a few more hours on it. The way that the Corsair power supply cable came for this 8-pin PCIe cable made it a little difficult, but I think we did a good job hiding everything, making everything look nice, especially in that hard to reach 8-pin down over here. Then we also put over here the Wi-Fi adapter, which I forgot to connect the antenna over here. If I would have bought the wireless board, it would have been built in, but they didn't have them at the time, so I had to buy this board. And this particular adapter is both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi as well. Fits perfectly nice. We have a ton of options here for connections. USB 3.0, USB 2.0, USB Type-C, HDMI, DisplayPort, BIOS flashback button, incredibly important. And then here would have been if we would have bought the one that had the wireless adapter. And then we have audio here as well as 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. The power supply down here was a little challenging with its very odd railing system. So the power supply is actually sunk in there. So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to fit in there. But anyway, aside from that, the build looks nice. So this is just the build video to show you how to build inside of it. My next video, we're going to be turning on the PC for the first time. We're going to be flashing the BIOS, configuring the BIOS, installing Windows, and then installing all of the drivers. That's going to be coming up soon. If it's up, you're going to see it right over here. And if it's not, I'm going to have the cabling portion of another build I just recently did. This is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.